Very seldom does a man hear his eulogy. And yet, I'm very proud of it, because I've had these types of introductions by the Catholics, by the Jews, by the Protestants. The only ones that I'm missing is an Arabian, and I don't think he would come up to par as far as that's concerned. Many of you have heard of the book that was written by Tom Brokaw, who said the greatest generation was my generation, born in the early 20s. The war, the depression, everything. But I called him and I told him the greatest generation was my mother and my father. Let me just step back a second. My mother was a survivor of the famous shirt catastrophe in New York, where almost several hundred women burned to death. My father was a survivor of the Russian army. He had served his 9 years, and when he came to ask for his discharge, he told he was Jewish and that he was automatically re-enlisted. That really floored him. The next thing he knew, he was in Bremen, Germany, and he was working very, very hard to save up $32 to be able to come to America. $32. It took him a year and a half. And he came, naturally he didn't come first class. He probably came attached to the anchor, but he got to America. Now when I look up at this audience, I'm very pleased. This audience to me is America. Don't look at the Cleveland Plain Dealer every morning and think that that is America. It isn't. You, every one of you, is American. And cherish it. Whatever you do, don't give up on it. We're a great country, and it's been made great through the immigration. When I studied immigration, I discovered that the Irish came, and the ones that were left in Ireland were known as the Soupers, S-O-U-P-E-R-S. And these were people that stayed and were not inclined to come to America because the English overlords made certain that their poverty was permanent, and some stayed. But fortunately, many of the Irish came. So what did the poor Irish do when they got here? Nobody wanted to do anything with them, because at this time we were mostly a Protestant country. So they became bricklayers, they became cement finishers, they became everything that the rest of America didn't want to do. Now you listen to Margaret Wong, you should know that most of the railroads that were built across the West was done by Chinese labor, and almost for nothing. And in my way of thinking, we owe the state of China, in some respects, an apology for the way we treated them. Then came the Italians. Now the Italians, they called them Dagos, they called them Ides, they called them everything in the book. And yet, they couldn't get a job. So what did some of them do? The same thing the Jews did. They coalesced, they made alliances amongst each other, and many of them turned to ways of the mafia. And that didn't last long, fortunately, and that was their plight. Now when I think that this country was built by your parents, grandparents, great-grandparents. You should be proud of every one of them. They had to be great people. And that's what I explained to Tom Brokaw at the time. Whether or not he agreed with me, I don't know. But my mother, who was Polish, my father, as I said, was Russian, loved reading, and I couldn't speak English until I was 7. And they sent me to an elementary school on 146 in Kingswood. And the first day I was there, I had to go to the bathroom, and I spoke to the teacher in 5 different languages except English, and I pooped in my pants. Since that time, I presume she's taken up some of these languages. So the penalty was, I was taken home by the truant officer, and he knocked on the door, and my mom came out, and the minute she saw that I was there, she thought, what a terrible trouble, what did he do? Accept her. And he explained to her, and she listened. And then the Cleveland Board of Education, I'm probably the oldest living student member of the Cleveland Board of Education, decided that for a punishment, my mother, my father, and I were to be sentenced to a library for 2 hours a day to learn how to speak English. And from there on, it was up. So I counsel all of you to remember that this country is, in my opinion, the greatest country in the world. Just remember this, you and your forebears made it great. And what we're lacking today, we've become almost incestuous. We are suffering from what I call tired blood by keeping out the immigrants. The immigrants, the fresh blood, we need in no way possible to tell you how badly we need them. They're terrific. They're absolutely terrific. And don't give up. When I was a youngster, and I was reading the paper about valedictorians and salutatorians, I was always amazed on the number of Jewish names. I don't see them anymore. The names today are either Indian or Chinese or Filipinos. And I recently asked Charles Krautheimer, a fellow from Fox News, I spent an hour with him last Friday, are we being threatened now? What's wrong with us? We're 16th in the world as far as general education is concerned. And here is China, here is India, say 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Are they that much better than we? No. You see, when you have 1,300,000,000 Chinese, and you have 1,100,000,000 Indians, you have 2.4 million people. Know that in every civilization, 10% are always outstanding. That would be 240 million people. We are only 330 million people, so all we could possibly come up with is only 33 million. So don't feel that our educational system is such. We have a good educational system. I know what it did for me, and I know what it's done for most of the people that I've been with. So I thank you for this honor. I really do. I appreciate it, and I hope that every one of you here someday will be standing at the podium. Know that I won't be sitting there, though. Not that I don't respect you, but 92 is 92. You may as well face it. So I thank you very much. I would love to be able to stand for you, for every one of you, but I don't have that kind of strength anymore. But all I can tell you is look around and remember, the plaintiff is not the history of our people.